Hi, chest tube drainage system part 3. Today we'll cover troubleshooting and one or two things that ought to be mentioned. So for starters, over here in the air leak monitor, if you see increased bubbling here, increased bubbling or constant bubbling, there is an issue. So you should reach out to the provider. But take note that if the indication for the chest tube treatment is pneumothorax, realize that what you are trying to achieve is get the air that is in the pleural space out of the pleural space. So if your chest tube drainage system is working, that means that air should be coming out if it is pneumothorax. And with more air coming out, there should be more activity over here in the air leak monitor. So you will see at the initially in the treatment, at the beginning part of the treatment, you will see that there will be more bubbling here to show that it is working, the treatment is working. Because if the idea is to remove air from the patient and nothing is happening here, that means that air is not coming out and maybe the catheter is kinked or is malpositioned or is obstructed. So take note of the difference. What you should see here with pneumothorax is bubbling, continuous bubbling, or at least increased bubbling. But if it is not pneumothorax or it is at the end of treatment, the treatment should end between 2 to 3 days. At the end of 2 to 3 days, whether it's pneumothorax or whatever, there shouldn't be air, there shouldn't be anything happening here. If there is continuous or increased bubbling here after 2 or 3 days of treatment, whether pneumothorax or otherwise, you know that there is an air leak somewhere. But if it is not pneumothorax, it may be hemothorax, or they're trying to take out fluid from the pleural space, and you see increased or continuous bubbling here, there is an issue with that, and you should reach out to the provider. So I hope that the difference is clear. Then another thing to take note of, the leak we're talking about may be inside the patient, that's the pleural space, or outside the patient, that's within the tubing, from the chest tube coming out of the patient to the tube that connects it to the system. So that is where the leak may be originating from. One way to tell the difference where the leak is coming from is if the leak is intermittent and it goes in the same direction with respiration, there is a possibility that the leak is coming from the pleural space, that's inside the patient. But if it is just increased and constant bubbling, then the chance is that it is from within the tubing outside the patient. So take note of those important differences. But generally, what you should see here that counts as normal is gentle bubbling in the water seal, and that's when it says that's when it means it's normal, until the time that the lung re-expands. Then another thing to note is when troubleshooting, when you want to find out where the air leak is coming from. For instance, if this is the tubing here, this is attached to the patient. Let's say this is the chest tube site. So what you do is that you want to know along this tubing, where is the leak coming from. The first thing you should do is check all the connections. There is a connection between the chest tube coming out of the patient and the tube that leads to the drainage unit. So check that connection. Usually there's a tape over it. Check, make sure it's tight, and that you reinforce the tape there to make sure that the air leak is not coming from there. After you do that and you still check your air leak monitor and you see that it's still bubbling continuously, then you know that the leak is from somewhere else. So now to check along the length of the tubing, what you do is you clamp the tubing. One thing with clamping, you don't clamp for long, because once you clamp, you are increasing pressure in the lungs of the patient. So don't clamp it for long, otherwise you might cause pneumothorax for the patient. So what you do is clamp 10 seconds at least. You clamp here and you check if it is still bubbling. That means that the air leak is not here on this side. If it stops bubbling, that means that from this place where you clamp to here, that's where the air leak is. So if it keeps bubbling, you continue to go down the tubing. You clamp here again. If it keeps bubbling, you know that it's not there. You keep going down until you find where the leak is coming from. There is another connection between the tubing and the chamber itself, so you should also make sure that all the connections are tight. So for tidalin over here, you know where I said there is a ball that goes up and down here, so that is tidalin. If there is no tidalin, it can mean two things. It either means there is a blockage or the lung has re-expanded. So make sure you find out what it is that is obtainable at that time. Then another thing to note is if mistakenly the tube comes out of the patient, maybe somebody mistakenly steps on the tube and it comes out of the patient, what you should do is those supplies that you should have at the bedside, gauze, sterile water and all those things, this is when they come to use. So if the disconnection is from the chest tube side itself, what you should do is you should immediately occlude that hole there so that air does not enter, you know, into the patient. The patient does not suck in air. So what you do is you take the dressing, that's the gauze, and cover that place and tape it on 3 sides. They are taping it on 3 sides to prevent pneumothorax. So, but if the tubing disconnection is between the tube itself, that's the chest tube that came out of the patient, and the tubing that leads to the unit, if that's where the disconnection is, you quickly take the chest tube that came out of the patient and put it inside, let me use this, put it inside sterile water, at least 1 inch of sterile water to establish a water seal. So put it inside before you now arrange to change the unit. And in changing the unit, you don't need to change the whole thing with the tubing. You can just change only this. That's only this. There's a place to disconnect this. So you disconnect it and then replace it with another new tube, new unit. Then if it's knocked over, if this unit is knocked over, if maybe somebody kicked it, or you are trying to move things from the side of the patient's bed and you accidentally push it, what you should do is change this. And there are times when somebody, maybe a patient relation or somebody else walking inside the patient's room, may come in and accidentally kick it and put it back up. The way you know that something is wrong is if you see that there is drainage here, and drainage here. That means it fell and the drainage spread across all the units. So originally it should be like this. If it fills this place, then it goes down here, fills this place, and then it fills this place. So that's how you know something is wrong. You change the unit. Then for clamping, you should only clamp when you want to assess leaks, just like I have described here, or when you want to replace the unit. And in replacing the unit, it has to be done quickly because you know you have to clamp. You have a limited time to clamp. So if you are replacing the unit, get everything together. Get everything that you need together in one place and open it and get ready, so that once you clamp, you just quickly connect it and then unclamp, because you don't have time to clamp and be organizing things before you unclamp and put it. You have like 10 seconds to unclamp it, just for the safety of the patient. And another time you should clamp is by the physician's order. So those are the 3 times you should clamp: when you're assessing a leak, when you're replacing the unit, and when it is ordered by the physician. So I think that's about covers it. Thanks for listening. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and follow for more.